Okay, everybody, I'm back, and it's time for the next chapter, Journey to Dream Country. After the mad frobscottle party was over, Sophie settled herself again on top of the enormous table. "You is feeling better now?" asked the big friendly giant. "Much better, thank you," Sophie said. "Whenever I is feeling a bit scrotty," the BFG said, "a few gollops of frobscottle is always making me hopscotchy again." "It's quite an experience," Sophie said. "It's a raz twizzler," the BFG said. "It's gloriumptious." He turned away and strode across the cave and picked up his dream-catching net. "I is galloping off now," he said, "to catch some more wopsy-whiffling dreams for my collection. I is doing this every day without missing. Is you wishing to come?" "No, thank you, not me, thank you very much," Sophie said. "Not with those other giants lurking outside." "I is snuggling you very cozy in the front of my waistcoat," he said. Before Sophie could protest, he picked her up off the table and popped her into the waistcoat pocket. There was plenty of room in there. "Is you wishing for a little hole to peep out of?" he asked her. "Oh, there's one here already," she said. She found a small hole in the pocket, and when she put one eye close to it, she could see out very well indeed. She watched the BFG as he bent down and filled his suitcase with empty glass jars. He closed the lid, picked up the suitcase in one hand, took the pole with the net on the end in the other hand, and marched towards the entrance of the cave. As soon as he was outside, the BFG set off across the great, hot, yellow wasteland where the blue rocks lay, and the dead trees stood, and where all the other giants were skulking about. Sophie, squatting low on her heels in the pocket of the waistcoat, had one eye glued to the little hole. She saw the group of enormous giants about 300 yards ahead. "Hold your breaths," the BFG whispered. "Cross your figglers. Here we go." "We is about to go right past all these other giants. Is you seeing the whopping great one nearest us?" "I see him," Sophie whispered back, quivering. "That is the horriblest of them all, and the biggest. He is called the flesh-lump-eating giant." "I don't want to hear about him," Sophie said. "He's 54 feet high," the BFG said softly as he jogged along, "and he is swallowing human beings like sugar lumps, 2 or 3 at a time." "You're making me nervous," Sophie said. "I is nervous myself," the BFG whispered. "I always get as jumpsy as a jog hopper when the flesh-lump-eating giant is around." "Keep away from him," Sophie pleaded. "Not possible," the BFG answered. "He is galloping easily 2 times as quicksy as me." "Shall we turn back?" "Turning back is worse," the BFG said. "If they is seeing me running away, they is all giving chase and throwing rocks." "They would never eat you, would they?" "Giants is never guzzling other giants. They is fighting and squarreling, but never guzzling. Human beings is more tasty to them." The giants had already spotted the BFG, and all heads were turned, watching him as he jogged forward. He was aiming to pass well to the right of that group. Through her little peephole, Sophie saw the flesh-lump-eating giant moving over to intercept him. He didn't hurry. He just loped over casually to a point where the BFG would have to pass. The others loped after him. Sophie counted 9 of them all together, and she recognized the blood bottler in the middle of them all. They were bored. They had nothing to do until nightfall. There was an air of menace around them as they loped slowly across the plain with long, lolloping strides, heading for the BFG. "Here comes the runty one," boomed the flesh-lump-eater. "Ho-ho there, runty one! Where is you splash-winkling away to in such a hefty hurry?" He shot out an enormous arm and grabbed the BFG by the hair. The BFG didn't struggle. He simply stopped and stood quite still and said, "Be so kind as to be letting go of my hair, Flesh-Lump-Eater." The Flesh-Lump-Eater released him and stepped back a pace. The other giants stood around, waiting for the fun to start. "Now then, you little grob squiffler," boomed the Flesh-Lump-Eater. "We is all wanting to know where you was galloping off to in the daytime? Nobody ought to be galloping off until dark. The human beings could easily be spotting you and start a giant hunt. And we is not wanting that to happen now, is we?" "We is not," shouted the other giants. "Go back to your cave, runty one." "I is not galloping off to human bean country," the BFG said. "I is going other places." "I is thinking that you is catching human beings and keeping them as pets," said the flesh lump eater. "Right you is," cried the blood bottler. "Just now I is hearing him chittering away to one in a cave." "You is welcome to search my cave from frack to bunt," the BFG said. "You can go looking in every crook and nanny. There is no human beans or stringy beans or runner beans or jelly beans or any other beans in there." Sophie crouched as still as a mouse inside the BFG's pocket. She didn't dare to breathe. She was terrified she might sneeze. The slightest sound or movement would give her away. Through the tiny peephole, she watched the giants clustered around the poor BFG. How revolting they were, all of them with their piggy little eyes and enormous mouths and thick sausage lips. When the flesh lump eater was speaking, she got a glimpse of his tongue. It was jet black, like a slab of burnt steak. Every one of them was more than twice as tall as the BFG. Suddenly, the flesh lump eater shot out two enormous hands and grabbed the BFG around the waist. He tossed him high in the air and said, "Catch him, man-hugger." The man-hugger caught him. The other giants spread out in a large circle, each giant about 20 yards from his neighbor, preparing for a game they were going to play. Now the man-hugger threw the BFG high and far, shouting, "Catch him, bone cruncher." The bone cruncher ran forward and caught him, and caught the tumbling BFG and immediately swung him up again. "Catch him, child chewer," he shouted. And so it went on. The giants were playing ball with the BFG, vying with each other to see who could throw him the highest. Sophie dug her nails into the sides of his pocket, trying to prevent herself from tumbling out while she was upside down. She felt as though she were in a barrel going down Niagara Falls. And all the time there was a fearful danger that one of the giants would fail to catch the BFG, and he would go crashing to the ground. "Catch him, meat dripper! Catch him, gizzard gulper! Catch him, maid masher! Catch him, blood bottler! Catch him, catch him, catch him!" In the end, they got bored with this game. They dumped the poor BFG on the ground. He was dazed and shattered. They gave him a few kicks and shouted, "Run, you little runt! Let's see how fast you is galloping." The BFG ran. What else could he do? The giants picked up the rocks and hurled them after him. He managed to dodge them. "Ruddy little runt," they shouted. "Troggy little twit, shrivelly little shrimp, mucky little midget, squoggy little squib, grobby little grub." At last the BFG was clear of all of them, and in another couple of minutes the pack of giants was all out of sight over the horizon. Sophie popped her head up from the pocket. "I didn't like that," she said. "Whew," said the BFG. "Few and far between. They was in a nasty, crotcheling mood today, was they not? I is sorry you is having such a whirly-gig time." "No worse than you," Sophie said. "Would they ever really hurt you?" "I isn't ever trusting them," the BFG said. "How do they actually catch the humans they eat?" Sophie asked. "They is usually just sticking an arm through the bedroom window and snitching them from beds." "Like you did to me." "Ah, but I is not eating you," said the BFG. "How else did they catch them?" "Sometimes they is swimming in the sea like fishies, with only the head showing above the water, and then they comes out with a big hairy hand and grabbles someone on the beach." "Children as well?" "Often chidlers," the BFG said. "Little chidlers who was building sandcastles on the beach. That is who the swimming ones are after. Little chidlers is not so tough to eat as an old grandmama. So says the child-chewing giant." And so, as they talked, the BFG was galloping fast over the land. Sophie was standing right up in his waistcoat pocket now, holding the edge with both hands. Her head and shoulders were in the open, and the wind was blowing in her hair. How else do they catch people? All of them is having their own special ways. The meat-dripping giant is preferring to pretend he is a big tree growing in the park. He is standing in the park in the dusky evening, and he is holding great branches over his head. And there he is waiting until some happy families is coming to have a picnic under the spreading tree. The meat-dripping giant is watching them lay out their little picnic, but in the end it is the meat-dripper who is having a picnic. "It's too awful!" Sophie cried. "The gizzard-gulping giant is a city lover," the BFG went on. "He is lying up between the roofs of houses in the big cities. He is lying there snuggy as a sniggler and watching the human beings walking on the street. And when he sees one that looks like it has a wopsy good flavor, he grabs it. He is simply reaching down and snitching it off the street like a monkey taking a nut. He says it is nice to be able to pick and choose what you is having for supper. He says it is like looking from a menu." "Don't people see him do it?" Sophie asked. "Never is they seeing him. Don't forget it is dusky dark at this time. Also, the gizzard gulper has a very fast arm. His arm is going up and down quicker than Squinkers." "But if all of these people are disappearing every night, surely there's some sort of outcry," Sophie said. "The world is a whopping big place," the BFG said. "It has 100 different countries. The giants is clever. They is careful not to be skididdling off to the same country every too often. They is always switch fiddling around." "Even so," Sophie said. "Do not forget," said the BFG, "that human beings is disappearing all the time without giants guzzling them up. Human beings is also killing each other much quicker than the giants is doing it." "But they don't eat each other," Sophie said. "Giants isn't eating each other either," the BFG said, "nor is giants killing each other. Giants is not very lovely, but they is not killing each other. Nor is crocodile dillies killing other crocodile dillies, nor is pussycats killing other pussycats." "They kill mice," Sophie said. "Ah, but they is not killing their own kind," the BFG said. "Human beings is animals that is killing their own kind." "Well, don't poisonous snakes kill each other?" Sophie said. She was desperately searching for another creature that behaved as badly as humans. "Even poisonous snakes is never killing each other," the BFG said, "nor is fearsome creatures like tigers and rhinoceroses. None of them is ever killing their own kind. Have you never thought of that?" Sophie kept silent. "I is not understanding human beings at all," he said. "You is a human being, and you saying it is grizzling and horrigus for giants to be eating human beings. Right or left?" "Right," Sophie said. "But human beings is squishing each other all the time," the BFG said. "They is shooting guns and dropping bombs every week. Human beings is always killing human beings." He was right. Of course he was right, and Sophie knew it. She was beginning to wonder whether humans were actually better than giants. "Even so," she said, defending her own people, "I think it's rotten those foul giants would go off every night to eat humans. Humans have never done them any harm." "That is what little piggies is saying to you every day," the BFG answered. "He is saying I is never doing anything to harm human beings, so why is they eating me?" "Oh dear," Sophie said. "The human beings is making rules to suit themselves," the BFG went on. "But the rules they is making do not suit the little piggy wiggies. Am I right or left?" "Right," Sophie said. "Giants is always making rules too. Their rules is not suiting human beings. Everyone makes rules to suit himself." "But you don't like it that those beastly giants are eating humans, do you?" "I do not," the BFG said firmly. "One right is not making two lefts. Is you quite cozy down there in my pocket?" "I'm fine," Sophie said. Then suddenly, once again, the BFG went into that magical top gear of his. He began hurtling forward with phenomenal leaps. His speed was unbelievable. The landscape became blurred, and again Sophie had to duck down from the whistling gale to save her head from being blown right off her shoulders. She crouched in the pocket and listened to the wind screaming past. It came knifing through the tiny peephole in the pocket and whooshed around her like a hurricane. But this time the BFG didn't stay in top gear long. It seemed as though he had some barrier to cross, a vast mountain perhaps, or an ocean, or a desert. But having crossed it, he once again slowed down to his normal gallop, and Sophie was able to pop her head up and look once more at the view. She noticed almost immediately that they were now in an altogether paler country. The sun had disappeared above a film of vapor. The air was becoming cooler every minute. The land was flat and treeless, and there seemed to be no color at all. Every minute the mist became thicker. The air became colder, and everything became paler and paler until soon there was nothing but gray and white all around them. They were in a country of swirling mists, ghostly vapors. There was some sort of grass underfoot, but it was not green. It was ashy gray. There was no sign of a living creature around, and no sound at all, except for the soft thud of the BFG's footsteps as he hurtled on through the fog. Suddenly he stopped. "We is here at last," he announced. He bent down and lifted Sophie from his pocket and put her on the ground. She was still in her nightie, and her feet were bare. She shivered and stared around her at the swirling mists and ghostly vapors. "Where are we?" she asked. "We is in Dream Country," the BFG said. "This is where all dreams are beginning." All right, that's the end of that chapter. Next chapter is called Dream Catching. That should be interesting. All right, see you soon.